There is a clay tablet sitting in the British Museum right now, room 56. It's roughly the size of a paperback novel, brown, cracked, covered in tiny wedge-shaped marks pressed into its surface nearly 4,000 years ago. Most visitors walk right past it. It doesn't look like much. But this tablet, a fragment of what scholars call the Atrahasis epic, dated to approximately 1700 BCE, contains the oldest known account of human creation on Earth. Older than Genesis by over 1,000 years, and it tells a very different story. It doesn't describe a loving God breathing life into clay. It describes a labor crisis. A workforce of lesser gods who burned their tools, surrounded their commander's residence, and refused to dig one more canal. And it describes the cold, calculated decision to engineer a biological replacement. A creature built for one purpose: to work. The tablet isn't hidden. It isn't locked away. What's been banned for over 2 millennia isn't the clay. It's the conclusion. The one question no institution, religious or academic, wants you to ask. What if the oldest creation story on Earth isn't a myth, but a work order? To understand why this matters, you need to understand the timeline. Sumerian civilization emerged in southern Mesopotamia around 4,500 BCE, over 6,000 years ago. These people invented writing. They developed mathematics, astronomy, and codified law. And they left behind tens of thousands of clay tablets documenting everything from grain inventories to cosmic origins. In the 1840s and 1850s, British archaeologists Austin Henry Layard and Hormuzd Rassam excavated the ruins of Nineveh, the ancient Assyrian capital, and unearthed the library of King Ashurbanipal. Over 30,000 tablets. Among them were creation accounts that predated the Hebrew Bible by a millennium or more. The Atrahasis epic, the Enuma Elish, the Eridu Genesis. These weren't footnotes to biblical history. They were the source material. The mainstream academic position is straightforward. Sumerian creation myths are ideological narratives, stories ancient people told to explain why the world works the way it does. The gods represent natural forces. The creation of humans from clay is a universal metaphor for mortality. Any resemblance to Genesis reflects a shared cultural environment across the ancient Near East, not direct borrowing. This is the consensus taught in most university departments today, and it is not unreasonable. But there's a crack in that consensus, and it appeared over a century ago. In 1902, Friedrich Delitzsch, one of Germany's most respected Assyriologists, delivered a series of lectures in Berlin titled Babel und Bibel, Babylon and the Bible. His finding was devastating. The parallels between Babylonian creation texts and Genesis were not coincidental. They were textual. The creation narrative, the flood, the garden, the forbidden tree, all present in Sumerian and Babylonian sources centuries before the Hebrew scriptures were composed. Delitzsch's conclusion was simple. The Old Testament was a reworked, monotheized adaptation of far older Mesopotamian originals. The reaction was immediate. The Kaiser intervened personally. Theological institutions across Europe condemned what they called Pan-Babylonianism. Delitzsch's reputation was systematically dismantled. The subject was effectively closed, not by evidence, but by institutional force. Delitzsch was right, and his findings were buried for a century. But in the early 2000s, a translator working inside the Vatican itself would arrive at the same conclusion, not from Babylonian tablets, but from the Hebrew Bible's own words. And his story would prove even harder to dismiss. The official explanation. To be fair, mainstream scholarship offers a coherent framework for these texts. Ancient creation myths served social functions. They legitimized kingship, explained natural disasters, and codified class hierarchies. The Igigi-Anunnaki division, scholars argue, is simply human social stratification projected onto the divine. The creation of humans from clay mixed with divine substance appears worldwide, from Prometheus to the Popol Vuh, reflecting universal existential anxiety, not historical memory. And the chromosome 2 fusion, which we'll discuss shortly, is well-documented evolutionary biology. Robertsonian translocations occur naturally. No peer-reviewed journal has published evidence for genetic intervention. This is the standard position. It commands institutional authority, and it has serious problems. Why it fails. The Atrahasis doesn't read like metaphor. It contains operational details that serve no allegorical purpose. The precise length of the labor period, 1 shar or 3,600 years. The specific act of burning tools, the siege of Enlil's residence, the political negotiation between Enki and the Divine Council. Parables don't include project timelines. The gods in these texts are biological. They experience physical exhaustion, hunger, fear, weeping, and political disagreement. Enlil cries when he sees the mob outside his door. These are not attributes of cosmic forces or personified thunder. These are attributes of biological entities with limits, emotions, and vulnerabilities. And the borrowing problem is too precise to wave away. Genesis doesn't merely share themes with Sumerian texts. It reproduces specific narrative sequences. Creation of man from earth plus a divine element. Woman formed as companion. A forbidden act leading to expulsion. A flood sent to destroy humanity, with one family saved by divine warning. The structure is identical. The theological wrapper is different. Finally, the suppression itself is not a conspiracy theory. The Babel und Bibel affair is a documented event in the history of biblical scholarship. The question was never whether the Sumerian Genesis connection was suppressed. The question is why. So, if the mainstream explanation has cracks, what does the original text actually say? Let's go to the source. Evidence. Block 1. The Igigi strike, when the gods walked off the job. The Sumerian pantheon was not a council of equals gathered in celestial harmony. It was a colonial administration. 2 classes, the Anunnaki, the ruling elite, including Anu, Enlil, Enki, and Nintu, and the Igigi, a lower caste assigned to physical labor on Earth. The work was specific, digging canals, dredging the Tigris and Euphrates, building the irrigation infrastructure that would make Mesopotamia habitable. The texts call these waterways the veins of the land. This was not spiritual service, it was civil engineering at an industrial scale. For 1 shar, 3,600 years, the Igigi performed this labor. Then they broke. The Atrahasis records it plainly. When the gods, instead of man, had to do the work, bear the load, the burden of the gods was great, the work was heavy, the distress was much. The Igigi burned their pickaxes and spades. They marched on the Ikur, Enlil's residence, and surrounded it. This wasn't a prayer meeting. It was a siege. Enlil's reaction tells you everything you need to know about what kind of god he was. He wept. He called for Anu, the higher authority, to come down and intervene. He was afraid. Not the behavior of an omnipotent deity, the behavior of a governor staring at a mutiny he can't control. The council convened. The question on the table, how do we get the work done without doing it ourselves? And Enki, the scientist, the engineer, the problem solver of the pantheon, proposed the answer. Let the birth goddess create a primitive worker. Let him bear the yoke. Let man carry the toil of the gods. The term is specific. Bear the yoke. In the ancient Near East, the yoke was the universal symbol of enslavement, applied to draft animals and conquered peoples alike. There is no ambiguity in this language. The manufacturing process. Nintu, the birth goddess, mixes clay, terrestrial biological material, with the blood and flesh of a slaughtered god named Geshtue, described in the text as a god who had intelligence. The Atembu, the ghost, the consciousness of the slain god, is left inside the new creature so that the sign of the god would not be forgotten. The result? 14 beings, 7 male, 7 female, produced in what reads unmistakably like a batch production run. This isn't theology, it's a bioengineering project summary, a labor dispute resolved by manufacturing a biological workforce from blended genetic material. The purpose, not worship, not companionship, not divine love, labor. The very first humans, according to the oldest text on Earth, were products. But the Atrahasis tells us why and how. The story was later rewritten. Many gods became one god. The factory floor became a garden. The manufactured slave became a beloved child. Who did the rewriting? And did they know what they were hiding? Evidence Block 2. The Vatican's own translator. Bellino and the Elohim Deception. Mauro Bellino was not a fringe theorist posting videos from his basement. He was a professional translator contracted by Edizioni San Paolo, the official publishing house of the Vatican, to produce interlinear translations of the Masoretic Hebrew text. Interlinear translations are word-for-word, literal renderings used exclusively by theologians and scholars. No smoothing, no interpretation, no doctrinal polish, just what the ancient Hebrew says. Bellino translated 17 books of the Old Testament for them. Then he started talking publicly about what the text actually contained, and his central claim landed like a grenade in a cathedral. The Bible does not speak of God. The Hebrew word translated as God throughout the Old Testament is Elohim, and Elohim, grammatically, morphologically, indisputably, is plural. The singular form is El, or Eloah. This is not Bellino's opinion. This is Hebrew grammar. Genesis 1:26 reads, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness." The pronouns are plural. The verb forms are plural. The standard theological explanation, the royal we, or an early hint of the Trinity, is, according to Bellino, a patch applied centuries later to a text that plainly describes multiple beings making a collective decision. Then there is Psalm 82, what Bellino calls the smoking gun. Elohim stands in the assembly of El. Among the Elohim, he renders judgment.
You are
Then,
gods,
you are Elohim,
but
but you shall die like men. Gods who die. Powerful beings, but mortal, biological, finite. Think about that for a moment. The Vatican hired Bellino to translate their own sacred text. They just didn't expect him to tell anyone what it actually said. But Bellino went further. He examined terms that had been given theological translations for centuries and argued they were technical descriptions. Kavod, traditionally rendered as glory of God, but the Hebrew root kvd means weight, heaviness, gravitational force. When Moses asks to see the kavod, Yahweh warns that seeing its front would be lethal, but allows Moses to glimpse its rear from a sheltered position in a rock cleft. Bellino argues this describes physical danger, thrust, radiation, exhaust, not spiritual awe. Ruach, traditionally Holy Spirit or wind. Yet Psalm 18:10 states plainly, "He rode upon a cherub and flew. He soared on the wings of the Ruach." The Spirit of God hovering over the waters in Genesis becomes, in Bellino's reading, a survey craft scanning a terraforming project. Bellino's contract with Edizioni San Paolo was terminated. His translations, the literal ones, the ones the Vatican commissioned, remain linguistically undisputed. What the Vatican disputes is the conclusion those translations point toward. The pattern is unmistakable. Delitzsch, 1902. Correct findings, career destroyed. Bellino, 2000s. Correct translations, Contract terminated. A century apart, different countries, different centuries, the same mechanism activating the moment someone reads the source text literally. Bellino decoded the WHO, the Atrahasis decoded the why and the how. But if a species was truly engineered, if clay was mixed with divine blood to produce a hybrid worker, there should be a signature, not in ancient text, in living tissue, in every cell of every human being alive today. Evidence Block 3, Chromosome 2, the genetic scar. Here is a fact no geneticist on Earth disputes. Every great ape, chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans, bonobos, has 48 chromosomes, 24 pairs. Humans have 46, 23 pairs. Somewhere in our lineage, 2 chromosomes fused into one. The fused chromosome is chromosome 2, the second largest in the human genome. Mainstream science explains this as a Robertsonian translocation, a natural, random fusion event that occurred roughly 780,000 years ago and eventually fixed in the population through genetic drift or selective advantage. Case closed. Except the details invite questions that random doesn't comfortably answer. Telomeres are the protective caps that exist at the ends of chromosomes. In chromosome 2, telomeric sequences appear at the center, exactly where 2 chromosome tips would meet if fused head-to-head. This is the join line, the weld mark, visible under analysis, unmistakable in its implications. 2 separate structures were connected. Then there's the centromere problem. Centromeres are the structures that guide chromosome separation during cell division. Every normal chromosome has 1 active centromere. Chromosome 2 has 2. 1 active, 1 vestigial, deactivated but still structurally present. A ghost of the original architecture. Proof positive that this chromosome was, at some point, 2 distinct chromosomes. Now, random Robertsonian fusions happen in nature, that's true. But they typically produce reproductive instability, reduced fertility, increased miscarriage rates, chromosomal disorders in offspring. Yet this particular fusion not only survived, it propagated to 100% of the human species. Every single person alive carries it. The fusion is remarkably clean, remarkably stable, and it correlates with a dramatic leap in brain size and cognitive complexity that has no smooth evolutionary precedent. Every cell in your body carries this, all 37 trillion of them. There's more. Approximately 200,000 years ago, coinciding with the emergence of anatomically modern humans, the FOXP2 gene underwent 2 specific amino acid changes found in no other primate. FOXP2 controls the fine motor coordination of the mouth and larynx required for complex speech. It had remained virtually unchanged across mammalian species for millions of years. Then, suddenly, 2 precise alterations. Geneticists call it a selective sweep. The result? Language. Why give language to a manufactured species? The Sumerian texts answer this directly. A mute worker is useful. A worker who can understand complex instructions, report problems, and coordinate with others is exponentially more effective. Language was a feature upgrade, not a gift of the soul, but a productivity enhancement. Though it would prove to be a double-edged sword. The same capacity that let the Lulu receive orders eventually let them conspire, organize, and rebel. A problem the texts address in the Tower of Babel narrative. The Atrahasis describes Nintu mixing clay, terrestrial biological material, possibly from a pre-existing hominid like Homo erectus, with the blood and flesh of a god-possessing intelligence. A hybridization event, local genome blended with an advanced one. The telomeric scar sitting in the middle of chromosome 2 is, potentially, the physical evidence of precisely that blend. 3 independent evidence streams: cuneiform text, Hebrew linguistics, molecular genetics. Each alone could be coincidence or creative interpretation. Together, they form a pattern that, at minimum, demands a question mainstream scholarship has been reluctant to ask. If humans were engineered to work, the texts describe the creation. The DNA may carry the scar. But every manufacturing operation needs a factory floor, and the Sumerians named it the Abzu, the deep place, beneath the earth. For decades, nobody knew where it was, until researchers started looking at the oldest mines on the planet. Evidence Block 4, the Abzu connection. Gold, Africa, and the cradle of slavery. In traditional Sumerian cosmology, the Abzu is the primordial freshwater ocean beneath the earth, the domain of Enki, the god who engineered the Lulu. Scholars have always read it as mythological geography. Zecharia Sitchin proposed something radically different, that Abzu was a real place, specifically southern Africa, the Mpumalanga region, one of the oldest geological formations on the planet and home to some of the most ancient gold deposits on Earth. The gold motive, according to Sitchin's reading of the tablets, was not monetary. The Anunnaki needed gold as atmospheric particulate, suspended nanoparticles to shield a degrading planetary atmosphere. This sounds like science fiction until you consider that modern geoengineering research into stratospheric aerosol injection operates on exactly the same principle. The desperation for this resource, Sitchin argued, explains the intensity of the labor and why the Ajiji finally broke under it. The physical evidence is provocative. Researcher Michael Tellinger has documented thousands of stone circle ruins scattered across the South African landscape, interconnected structures that he argues formed an ancient energy and mining network. The gold mines in this region have been dated through surrounding geological strata to approximately 200,000 years ago. That date should stop you cold. 200,000 years ago is precisely when anatomically modern Homo sapiens first appears in the fossil record. And where is the densest concentration of early human fossils on the planet? The cradle of humankind, in the same region as the ancient mines. The same geography, the same timeline, the same place. The texts describe a supply chain, mining operations in the Abzu, transport via ships of heaven, processing at Bad Tabira in Mesopotamia, a city whose name literally translates to Fortress of the Metalworkers. An industrial hub, not a temple complex. From there, export, upward, outward, off-world according to the more speculative interpretations. Genesis contains a quiet parallel that most readers skip. Adam is not created inside the Garden of Eden. He is formed elsewhere and then placed in the garden to tend and keep it. In Atrahasis, the Lulu is created in the Abzu and later transferred to Eden, the Mesopotamian alluvial plain, for agricultural labor. Two texts, two traditions separated by 1,000 years. The same sequence, made in one place, deployed to another. This is no longer a local myth about one culture's gods. It's a description of a planetary resource extraction operation, mining sites in Africa, processing centers in Mesopotamia, and a manufactured labor force connecting them. And creation for labor narratives aren't limited to Sumer and Genesis. They appear in Dogon oral tradition, Aboriginal Australian Dreamtime accounts, and Mesoamerican origin stories. Cultures with no contact, the same core narrative. The ancient evidence is there, in the tablets, in our DNA, in the mines. But ancient evidence can be filed under mythology and forgotten. So one final question remains. Is anyone still trying to keep this quiet? The answer takes us from the Bronze Age to Baghdad. Evidence Block 5. From Vatican vaults to Baghdad bunkers, the modern suppression. We've already seen the pattern. Delitzsch, 1902, correct, destroyed. Bellino, 2000s, correct, terminated. But the suppression doesn't stop at academia and publishing. In the 1960s, a Salesian priest named Carlo Crespi, stationed in Cuenca, Ecuador, amassed an extraordinary collection of artifacts given to him by indigenous Shuar people. Gold and metal plates bearing script that bore striking resemblance to Sumerian cuneiform and Phoenician characters, writing systems that should not exist in pre-Columbian South America. The collection suggested a global reach of whatever civilization the Sumerians were describing. After Crespi's death, the Vatican reportedly acquired the collection. The museum housing remaining artifacts had already burned in 1962. What survived the fire was dismissed by mainstream archaeologists as modern fabrication. 3 continents, 3 centuries, the same cycle: discover, suppress, discredit. Then came Iraq, April 2003, 1 month into the American invasion. A German archaeological team led by Jörg Fassbinder announced they had located a structure beneath the ruins of Uruk, modern Warka, that matched the description of Gilgamesh's burial site in the Epic of Gilgamesh. The text says he was buried beneath a diverted riverbed. Fassbinder's magnetometry scans revealed exactly that: a structure under an ancient river channel in a city that was already under military lockdown. The timing is difficult to ignore. The discovery was made in an active war zone. Access was immediately restricted. Meanwhile, the Great Ziggurat of Ur, one of the most significant surviving Sumerian structures on Earth, became Talil Air Base, a major American military installation. Military personnel stationed there reported restricted access to the archaeological site. The ziggurat itself was placed off limits to non-essential personnel. And in Baghdad, the Iraq Museum was looted in the chaos of the invasion. An estimated 15,000 artifacts disappeared. Investigators noted something unusual. The thieves bypassed display replicas and went directly to basement vaults, as if they knew precisely what they were looking for and where it was stored. A Freedom of Information Act request, case F-2019-02110, later surfaced in connection with U.S. State Department communications. The reported subject line referenced a resurrection chamber of Gilgamesh. Whether this specific document constitutes evidence of deliberate archaeological seizure or merely reflects bureaucratic curiosity about media reports is debatable. What is not debatable is the larger pattern. Wherever Sumerian evidence surfaces that threatens institutional narratives, in European lecture halls, in South American church collections, in Iraqi excavation sites, power moves to contain it. 3,700 years, from a scribe pressing wedges into wet clay in Babylon to a FOIA request on a government server in Washington. The sites change, the mechanisms update, the pattern holds. Let's step back and see what we're looking at. The Sumerian tablets, the oldest creation texts ever found, describe human beings as a manufactured labor force. Not metaphorically, operationally. A labor dispute, a design committee, a production run, a deployment schedule. The language is industrial, the purpose is explicit, the timeline is detailed. The Hebrew Bible, when translated literally by a contractor hired by the Vatican itself, tells the same story. Stripped of its plural gods, repackaged with a single deity, but structurally identical. The Vatican's own translator says the source text doesn't describe God, it describes biological entities. His translations remain linguistically unchallenged. His contract was terminated. Human chromosome 2 carries the physical signature of 2 chromosomes fused head-to-head, telomeres at the center, a vestigial second centromere still embedded in the structure. A genetic scar consistent with the kind of intervention the Sumerian texts describe, coinciding with the most dramatic cognitive leap in primate history. The oldest gold mines on Earth sit in the same soil as the oldest human fossils. The supply chain described in the tablets, mining in Africa, processing in Mesopotamia, aligns with archaeological geography. And the creation for labor narrative appears not just in Sumer and Genesis, but across cultures that had no contact with each other. And every institution that has encountered this convergence, theological, academic, military, governmental, has moved to contain it. Here is what matters most. The tablets are not hidden. They sit in glass cases in the British Museum, the Louvre, the Iraq Museum. The translations are not secret. They are published, cross-referenced, peer-reviewed on linguistic grounds. The genetic data is not classified. It is in journals that anyone with an internet connection can access. What has been banned is not the evidence. It is the interpretation. For 4,000 years, the same story has been told and retold, and each time it has been sanitized. The many gods became one god. The factory became a garden. The slave became a child. The work order became a blessing. But underneath every revision, the original cuneiform remains, unchanged, unedited, waiting for anyone willing to read it as written. If this reading holds, even partially, it doesn't challenge one theory or one religion. It reframes the entire human story. We weren't created out of love. We weren't evolved by accident. We were requisitioned, designed for a function, deployed to a work site. And the institutions we later built to explain our own existence may be the final layer of a control system that predates every civilization we know. But the Atrahasis records one detail the manufacturers apparently didn't anticipate. They needed the Lulu to be intelligent, smart enough to understand complex orders, report problems, coordinate in groups. So they implanted the Etemu, the consciousness, the ghost of a slaughtered god. They gave us minds that could think. And thinking minds, given enough time, do something inconvenient. They start asking questions. They start reading. They start decoding the very records their creators left behind. The feature that made us effective workers is the same feature that makes us dangerous to every institution built on our ignorance. What we've traced today is not a single discovery. It's a pattern. Textual evidence older than any scripture in use today, genetic anomalies that resist tidy evolutionary explanation, a global archaeological footprint connecting African mines to Mesopotamian processing centers, and a documented, centuries-long effort from Berlin to Rome to Baghdad to ensure that no one assembles these pieces into a single picture. Not every piece is conclusive. The tablets tell a story, but ancient stories can contain embellishment alongside memory. The genetic evidence is suggestive, not a closed case. The geopolitical connections are circumstantial. Honest inquiry demands we acknowledge this. But honest inquiry also demands we ask why the literal reading of the oldest creation text on Earth remains effectively forbidden, not by law, but by consensus, not by censorship, but by institutional reflex. The Atrahasis is available in translation. The chromosome 2 data is published. The museum catalogs are online. The question was never whether you could find the evidence. The question is whether you will, and what you'll do with it when you have. The Lulu were built to dig and obey, but the intelligence engineered into them had a side effect their creators may not have foreseen. It refuses the story it was handed. It digs, not into the earth, but into the past, and once it starts, it doesn't stop. What piece of this puzzle do you find most compelling? The textual evidence, the genetic data, or the modern suppression? And what do you think it means? Share your thoughts below. Subscribe if you want to keep pulling at this thread, because this is only one tablet, and there are thousands more. They built us to work. They gave us minds to think. Perhaps that was their only mistake.